collection is the Vrooman family collection, and it belonged to compatriot Ralph Sackett Jr. He lived in Fostoria, Ohio, and he was the last living descendant of the Vrooman family. And so he had cared for this collection for his entire life. And as he was getting a little bit older, he actually approached Tim when he was president of the Ohio Society, saying, I have this collection. It's my family papers. It's all related to the Revolutionary War. I'm not sure what to do with it. And so after compatriot Sackett passed away a couple of years ago, the collection actually passed to Tim. And I guess I can give my side of the story, and hopefully Tim can join us and give his perspective. But a couple of years ago, Tim started talking to me about the collection and saying, you know, I have these things. I really want to keep it together. It was left to me by an SAR compatriot. It's his family papers. There's some objects in there. There's some documents. I'm not sure what to do with it. So we corresponded and talked every time we saw each other at the Sarkar conference or at fall and spring leadership. And eventually I was able to visit Tim at his home, and we spent a few hours going through the collection. And after a couple hours looking at this, we were very certain that this is something that would be very appropriate for the SAR collection, kind of divided between the library and the museum. There's some great material culture from the Revolutionary War era, three-dimensional objects, but then there's also a lot of really rich genealogical records, some of which we'll go through today. And most significantly, there's a lot of records having to do with compatriot Sackett's patriot ancestor, Simon Vrooman, of Schenectady and Oswego, New York. These are papers that you typically don't see. As many people in the audience who have done their own genealogy and probably help a lot of others do their genealogical research, we can often find pension papers, pension applications on Ancestry, or if you go to DC and visit some of the archives, you'll find, kind of the final result of a pension application. But what this collection has done, and what we'll go through a little bit today, is really given us a behind the scenes look of what it was like to be a Revolutionary War veteran in the early and mid 19th century, and what that process was of applying for your pension. So luckily, Tim kept all these papers together. He cared for them well. They're in great condition. And late in 2023, we actually completed the donation, and this entire collection is now available, or is now housed at the SAR, and shortly some of these papers will be available for research. But we're really going to go through this collection in its entirety. Well, not in its entirety. We're going to do an overview of the whole collection. So we're going to look at some of the Revolutionary War material culture, and then we're going to dig into some of the documents. So we're going to start off by looking at this heirloom of the Vrooman family. Now, as you might be able to tell by the name Vrooman, this family was Dutch, and they were members of the Dutch Reformed Church in upstate New York. That's a very heavily Dutch area from, before New York became an English colony. It was, settled by the Dutch. So this Bible was among the objects that was in the Vrooman collection, and it's difficult to see, but actually right here above my thumb, you can see that it was printed in 1712, and I'll rotate it here, and you can actually see the word Amsterdam. So this Bible, which is completely in Dutch, belonged to the family. We're not exactly sure where it came from or how they got it. It may have been brought to North America by Simon Vrooman, who we will hear his name a lot today. He was compatriot Sackett's patriot ancestor. Simon was born in 1760, so this may have been brought to North America by one of his ancestors who came to New York. Alternatively, Bibles like this would have been being imported into New York City, Philadelphia, so it may have been purchased by the family. So this may have been, maybe a gift to Simon's father, Jacob. He may have received this when he was baptized, or it may have just been a family heirloom, but it's a great piece of history from the family. This aside, we're actually going to turn off some of our overhead lights so you can see this next object a little bit better. So what I'm holding here is a silver christening cup. This probably dates from 1724 or 1725. As you can see here, I'm going to rotate it so you can see the letters. Get this to focus for you. You can see there's an M, T, W. So these are actually the initials of Simon Vrooman's mother, Margarita Wimple, or perhaps Wemple. We found her name spelled with an I and an E in different places, but this is a silver christening cup. So you can see it's not very big. It's just a small gift. These were very popular gifts to give to newborns when they were baptized or christened in colonial America. And they're made out of sterling or coin silver. And the idea is that it's really a gift to promote health and wealth. In colonial America, drinking out of silver was thought to be healthy. They didn't have germ theory yet, but they really thought that, it's healthier to drink things out of silver. You wouldn't get sick. And then also, this is made of silver, so it's like a small savings account. It has tangible value. So if you have a rainy day and you really need, some funds to get by, you could cash this in. So you could kind of think about it as, giving somebody a savings bond for their baptism or their christening. And so these were thought to have, that intrinsic value. And what's really cool about this one is you can see in the bottom, it's actually has a coin incorporated into the base. So on the inside, you can see there are some letters there. There is a bust. It's a little bit difficult to make out on that side, but if you look at the bottom, you can see the coin actually retains much of its detail. And we're pretty sure this is actually a Louis XIV livre. So this would have been a French coin, and his reign was, or this coin would have been made probably about 1660 to 1712. So this is certainly something that could have been, floating around North America, or could have been specifically acquired to make this. But whoever made this for Margarita really kind of took it to the nth degree, so to speak, with actually incorporating money into the christening cup. So you can really see that idea of having tangible value. And to have a christening cup from this era with provenance to who it belonged to is really a rarity. And to have it with this entire collection, this was something that when I visited Tim, him and I were trying to figure out what this is. He thought it might be a small julep cup, something like that. And the more we dug into it, we were really floored when we finally figured out what it is. So let me set these aside and we'll take a look at the next object. Okay, I'll come back up. Okay, so if you were joined us for our last selections for the collection, you're actually here when we talked about this. This is a hunting gun that is believed to have been carried by Simon Vrooman during the American Revolution. This was in the Sackett collection, and it is very appropriate from that time period to have been carried by somebody like Simon Vrooman, who served in the New York militia in upstate New York. Now, this gun originates in France. This is actually a French hunting gun, or a fusil de chasse. This was probably originally made in the 1740s or the 1750s. And this gun, you can see, I'm having trouble keeping it all the way on the screen for you. This is actually the longest firearm in the SAR collection, its overall length is 74 inches. Typically, if you're looking at a Revolutionary War shoulder arm, you're looking at a length of typically around, 50 to 60 inches. But this is specifically for hunting. So this is a civilian firearm. This is what is really an early shotgun. This is for hunting small game or waterfowl. But as I said, it was originally made in France in the 1740s or 1750s. And by the time Simon Vrooman got it, he may have had it restocked, or it may have been restocked before he purchased it. This is the stock on here is American, but whoever restocked it probably had the original French gun sitting in front of them when they did this, because it is very similar in form to those French hunting guns. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, I'd recommend going back to our last episode of selections from the collection. You can find those on YouTube. We're going to take a little bit closer look at this, and you can see some of these French characteristics. Move this up for you a little bit. So you can see here, this is actually the original lock plate. And it may be a little difficult to see on the zoom, but you can see the words right here. And this is La Pernelle Frères, which is the Pernelle brothers. They were a very well-known firearms firm working out of Saint-Étienne in France. They were making firearms like this specifically for export to French Canada, where they're being traded for beaver pelts or other animal pelts. So these were highly prized by French hunters and native hunters in Canada. And then they were so effective that they were really highly sought after in the English colonies as well. And especially after the 7 Years' War, French and Indian War, these made their way south, where they were very highly coveted and really influenced fowler design in America. We'll just kind of rotate it around. You can see, flip it this way, this side plate on here, this is very distinctively French with the vertical line here and this overall shape. The butt plate, again, this design right here, very typically French for French hunting guns. And you'll notice all the furniture on here is iron. That is a more economical choice. So if you are trading, hunting guns for beaver pelts, you want to be getting as much bang for your buck, so to speak. So again, if this was a more higher end firearm, you'd be seeing brass components on here. And I'm going to move down here. Drew's going to share an image with you. So the image you're about to see is this portion of the barrel right here between my fingers, but on the underside. If you want to go ahead and share that, Drew. So you can see we took the barrel off to see if we might find any markings on the underside, and we did find this one right here. This is actually a barrel inspector's mark from Saint-Étienne, and that particular mark was used from 1733 to 1766. So that really helped us pin down that, this is a, pre-revolutionary gun. This is probably, or it is almost certainly a pre-French and Indian War gun as well. And you can see to the left of the mark there, there's actually the barrel maker's name, I.B. Giron. We have not been able to track down that particular maker. We found a few other examples of his work, but it's likely he was working in the Saint-Étienne area as well. But if you want to pop back up, Drew. Thanks for your patience. So again, this remained in the Vrooman Sackett collection until it was donated to the SAR. And we were very lucky recently to get a grant from Americana Corner. So very soon this is going to be going out for conservation, and it's going to get cleaned and conserved and stabilized. It's been well cared for during its lifetime, but this firearm is at least 225 years old, if not approaching 250 years old. So it is time to get a cleaning. Jacob. Okay, so much of the rest of the collection that we're going to be taking a look at today are documents and paper. This next document we're going to look at actually does not come from the Vrooman Collection, but is another one that relates to it. So following the Revolutionary War, soldiers and militiamen were not issued pensions until 1818. So this is a letter that was donated by Stephen Anschutz. It is dated June 11th, 1819, and it is addressed to Laban Landon. This is coming from the pension office. So Laban Landon is among the first Revolutionary War soldiers who were eligible for a pension. He was in the Continental Line. So in that initial round of pensions in 1818, only those soldiers who served under Washington in the proper Continental Army for 2 years were eligible for pensions. So not everybody, but Laban Landon was. And in this letter here, you have somebody from the pension office writing to him saying, we've received your application. They're really just verifying that he has submitted all of his paperwork because they think he might actually be eligible for a higher pension than what he had applied for. But I'm going to really zoom in here. And you can see he's saying this pension office clerk is saying to him that he thinks he deserves more a higher pension because to your being attached to the lifeguard of General Washington. Very respectfully yours. So we did some digging into Laban Landon, and he was actually among the elite units who were attached to Washington's lifeguards. Washington personally selected these individuals. So we did end up finding Laban Landon did get his pension. He made his way south. And I'm sorry, I can't remember right now, but he is either buried in northern Alabama or southern Tennessee. He kind of jumped back and forth over the border, moving between different homesteads. But this is a typical type of letter that was probably going back and forth between the pension office and soldiers. And, we think today about, maybe applying for a pension today or Social Security and how quickly we want to take care of those things. Well, these letters are going back and forth and then they have to be reviewed. So it's all very time consuming. And the other thing to keep in mind too is that this first round of pensions is not until 1818. So if you were 20 years old in 1776, you are 62 years old by this point. So with life expectancies being shorter in that time period, you think about the amount of Revolutionary War soldiers who actually survived that long to be able to even be eligible for their pensions. Then they have to start going through this process of applying for it. So we're going to jump back into the Vrooman Collection. I'm going to put a letter up here, and we're going to kind of go through this one a little bit more quickly. This is a letter sent to Simon Vrooman, August 25, 1838. This is actually coming from Simon's lawyer, who we'll see his name pop up quite a few times right here, Giles F. Yates. It does appear that they were pretty friendly with each other. They had pretty casual conversation. But in this letter, it appears by this point, so the next round of pension acts coming out of Congress is 1832. And with the 1832 acts, somebody like Simon Vrooman, who is a militiaman, is finally eligible. So Simon Vrooman does get his pension, and he starts having other individuals reaching out to him, other veterans, and essentially saying, hey, I heard you got your pension. Can you help me? To get your pension, you had to have an eyewitness and documentary evidence. So by this point, more than 40 years, almost 50 years have elapsed, and they're expecting, these veterans all start writing to each other again, saying, hey, can you vouch for me? I need you to go sign an affidavit. Hey, do you know where I can find records of our service? Do you know where the logbook is? So Simon's lawyer is writing to him and he's saying, I am, compelled to write to you because I've been being contacted by a lot of individuals. They heard that you got your pension. They can't find any record of their service. So if we flip this over, you can see the lawyer is writing to Simon Vrooman, and these are each individual saying, hey, do you remember William Brown? Do you remember Richard Bond? Do you remember Ephraim Brett? Do you remember, and it just goes on, and there's a little blurb about their service. And he's asking if Simon Vrooman can remember any of these people and if he will serve as an eyewitness to their service. So you can see, and it continues on the next page. So it's a pretty compelling list that you have all these names. This is potentially, unidentified Patriot soldiers from the Revolution in here. We'll need to dig into each of them. But this is, the type of correspondence going on. So this is coming directly from Simon Vrooman's lawyer to him, asking if he can remember any of these individuals. And then in the collection as well, there's also letters like this. And again, you can see from Giles F. Yates, and he's asking specifically, I received your favor of the first instant. Major Goodall and John Goodall both belong to the same company or regiment as you. I wish to know if at present if the names of the officers under whom John Goodall served, the names of the captain, lieutenant, and colonel will answer. This is again, they're asking specifically to Simon Vrooman, hey, do you remember these guys? Do you remember who they served for? So you can see there's really a organic network of individuals popping up, all trying to help each other. You have to imagine all of these guys are, by this point, at least 70 years old by 1839. So time is of the essence, and they're, writing to each other, trying to find this information. So this is and again, Tim only made this donation at the end of last year, so we have not had these letters for a long time. So we're still digging into these, and we feel like we've only scratched the surface, but we're really seeing a behind the scenes of what's going on. Okay, so we're now going to go through a series of letters that Simon received from his lawyer. We don't have the letter that Simon originally wrote, but this one is dated Schenectady, August 29, 1840. So this is coming again from G.F. Yates. And he writes to Simon, don't be alarmed, all will be well in the end. They have discovered 2 new levy and militia books in the comptroller's office. I have spent 4 days in examining them. You need not come to Schenectady. If I find it necessary, I will inform you. Your name is down as a private in the company of Captain Nicholas Veerden under Colonel Yates, Department of the Quartermaster General, not, in parentheses, not commissary or the Commissioner of Pensions, not commissary, as the Commissioner of Pensions calls it. And I want you to state precisely how it was with this service. Were you not taken out of this company of Colonel Yates to serve as his assistant, so you can you can please draw upon a new and full statement of your service. So in reading this letter, we've surmised that Simon Vrooman is getting his pension as a private, but he's been corresponding with his lawyer. He says, I served in the Quartermaster General's office as an assistant, so I actually think I might be entitled to a higher pension. So G.F. Yates has been down at the comptroller's office trying to find these records, and he's poring over levy books, looking for that indication of his service. So in the same series, Simon Vrooman must have responded to that letter, and in response, he receives this letter. And in it, G.F. Yates writes, in the comptroller's office, new books and papers have been discovered, and the clerk engages in arranging and indexing them. He has not yet completed his task. He has not yet made out his certificate for you and wishes to make a more thorough examination before he gives his certificate of your services. I will see to it next week when I go down. I can help you alone with every part of your alleged service, except that in the quartermaster department, if you were a clerk to Colonel Yates, the same as Will Ingen, was to Henry Glenn, it will go against you, as no clerks are allowed pensions. But I shall not use the term, quote, clerk. The term assistant will be the proper one. Of this, however, they will require documentary or recorded evidence. So you can see here that Simon is asking for an increased pension, and his lawyer is saying, actually, that might have been a mistake. You should have left well enough alone, but I think it's going to be fine. They think you're a clerk. I'm not going to use that term, though, so you can see here where they're really being kind of casual, and that his lawyer is saying, well, I just won't use that term, and we'll see if we can kind of slide this through. We're going to get you that pension. And as we go through these two, keep in mind, the first letter was August 29th. This letter is September 19th. They are corresponding fairly quickly, but if you're an aging individual and you're waiting for your increased pension, time is really of the essence. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of veterans doing this exact same process at the same time. Okay, so G.F. Yates was down at the pension office talking to the clerk there, and this is the response that Simon Vrooman receives from the clerk's office. This is January 1841. The certificate of the Comptroller of New York in the case of Simon J. Vrooman, who has applied for an increase of his pension under the Act of June 7, 1832, on the grounds of having served as an assistant commissary under Christopher Yates, confirms in a remarkable degree the claimant's original statement in respects to his service as a private and lieutenant, but does not furnish any evidence of his services as a commissary. Documentary evidence of his appointment or some original document showing that he was recognized by competent authority as an officer of that grade will be necessary to establish his claim. So you can see here where these veterans are submitting for increased claims. They're submitting for claims in general, and they're getting letters like this back. And, I try to put myself in their shoes. I can't imagine how exasperating it must be to go through all of these probate courts and to prove your service, and then relying on a lawyer who's in a town that you can't get to, and they're trying to claim your service. So I get a letter like this, essentially saying like, yeah, sorry, you didn't meet the grade. So he receives this in January. Later that year, in October, Simon receives this letter from his lawyer. So at this point, we're going on almost 2 years of this correspondence. And his lawyer says, G.F. Yates again, when the Commissioner of Pensions required you to give a specific statement of your service in order to enable you to retain your place on the pension roll, you could not draw any pension money at all. But the documentary evidence which I sent you a copy of did the benefits restored you to your former standing. The power of attorney to draw for 6 months, although of no use at first, afterwards was good, and I am responsible for the amount and owe you money. Apologies for not informing you of it. I thought it was not Fair to write to you as I intended to send you the net amount. I had the money ready last spring when I wished to you that I expected to see you at Schenectady. A little bit further down, I've consulted with Mr. Jenkins in the pension office, and the annexed power after execution, you have better, you had better send to him, said to forward you the money. Sorry, it's written kind of in shorthand. Essentially what he is saying here is when you applied for that higher pension, you had to vacate your spot on the pension roll. So when you made that original claim to move from a private up to a assistant in the commissary's office, you gave up your old pension in order to claim the new one. So in the meantime, you were not getting any pension payments. However, I had to resubmit your paperwork and I've gotten you back on the pension rolls. So you're now owed almost 2 years of back pay. So at this point, 1841, Simon Vrooman is 71 years old. So the last letter in this correspondence, February 16, 1842. So he's receiving this from the pension office saying that he is owed a full year's pay of pension, which is $214. There have been some fees taken out, but this episode after nearly 2 years was finally resolved. So this is really getting into the nitty gritty. It may not be the most exciting history to some people, but what it really shows you is how involved and how laborious and time consuming this pension process was. And there were a lot of offices set up, and there were a lot of people, working together to help these veterans, but it was really a waiting game, and you really had to have good legal counsel in order to get your pension. So also included in the collection are some other more administrative type papers. So zoom in on this a little bit for you. This is a certificate, and you can see this is a partially printed certificate from the War Department. This was in Simon Vrooman's papers, and you can see it is dateline to Oswego, and that before him, John Casey appeared in and for the county. In the county aforesaid, personally appeared Simon J. Vrooman, who we've been talking about. And it goes through, and you can see that this certificate was never actually completed all of the way. It looks like at one point, Simon was considering changing legal counsel. So this is in the middle of when he was applying for that increase in pension to go from a private up to an assistant commissary officer. And this certificate is one that the state used for veterans to tell the state who their legal counsel is going to be. So it was never fully filled out, but once again, these are the types of papers that we typically don't get to see because these weren't making their way into the pension files that are maintained at the War Department or at NARA today. But this is once again how laborious of a process this was, just another hoop to jump through. And it's pretty remarkable that they actually hung on to this particular document. And another thing we don't think about is how big of an industry these pensions would have created. Simon was working with G.F. Yates, who was his lawyer. So every time Simon received a payment, that means his lawyer was getting a small percentage. All of the banks that forwarded the money up to him in remote Schenectady, and eventually he moved to Oswego, all the way up on the northern border of New York. All these people are getting a little cut. So there's actually a lot of money to be made by legal counsel and banks. So this is a calling card that we found in the collection. And we think that Simon likely received this in the mail from Baldwin and Stein's general agents and correspondents will procure pensions, bounty land, back pays, extra pay, etc. They're working in Washington, D.C., and they're likely sending these cards out to people, much like today we see, attorneys advertising, on television or on park benches, things like that. This is the 19th century version of that. They're reaching out to Simon saying, let us represent you. We can get you more money. Contact us. Let's have a free consultation. So all of these veterans must have been receiving these things. And especially if you're living in a remote place like Oswego, New York, or by this point too, a lot of these veterans have moved to the Midwest or even, further west, into the South as well, trying to navigate all of this stuff from a remote location must have really been a task. But again, this is another type of advertisement. We don't see a lot of those, and we're very grateful that the family hung on to it. As we said at the beginning, there are some good genealogical materials in this collection. And one of those is this family Bible, which came with the collection. It has been rebound, luckily, which has actually probably really helped maintain the quality of it. You can see the original marbled paper here. We go to the title page. So I should have marked that for you. This Bible was printed in Philadelphia in 1838, and it was the family Bible, and this is actually the one that Simon used. So we come back to the family records here. You can actually see this column right here. This is actually Simon Vrooman's handwriting. He records here the death of his father, Jacob Vrooman, who also served in the American Revolution. He died in 1794. The death of his mother, Margarita. This is the Margarita who was given the silver christening cup when she was born. She passed away in 1806. There's some other family members recorded in here. And this is all genealogical information that the library is going to be working on making available to the public. Flip over here to the next page. You can actually see here is recorded Simon Vrooman's death. He died the 2nd day of January, 1844, aged 44 years. Just below it, you can see also is recorded his wife's death, Sally. And it's likely that Simon's death was recorded by Sally, and then Sally's death was recorded likely by one of their children. So Simon was, living to 1844. He would have been really among the some of the last Revolutionary War soldiers to live that long. So luckily, he did get to live for a long time and did get his pension and got to enjoy it. But after he passes away in 1844, his wife lives until 1848. So for 4 years, I'm going to take a look here. She is able to collect her widow's pension. So now that Simon has passed away and Sally is on her own, she starts receiving other solicitations, things like that. One thing that does not actually have to do with the pension, it's actually just such a cool piece we wanted to share with you all. This was found in the collection as well. This is an invitation to a July 4th ball in 1845. So this must have been sent to Sally. It was held in Oswego, New York. We're not sure if she went. We haven't been able to find any information about this party. But you can see how it's folded up. It was likely mailed to her at her home. And we hope she went to the party and we hope she had a good time. I will also say apologies if you can hear some background noise. There is active construction of the SAR Museum vigorously taking place right above me. So apologies if there's a little bit of background noise. But moving on to the next thing here, so you can see this is a letter that Sally Vrooman received in 1848, so very near the end of her life. And this is another solicitation letter. This is a lawyer from a nearby town writing to her saying, I heard that your husband had gotten a pension and he passed away. You are entitled to a widow's pension. So they sent her this letter saying, you know, should you want to seek our legal counsel and you want to make sure you're getting everything you deserve, reach out to us. They also included this very nice flyer describing more of what they have to offer and enticing her to reach out to them so they can help her get more of her widow's pension, of course, so they could also, you know, draw fees and things like that. But so even after these veterans are dying, their widows continue receiving these solicitations, which once again, this is really, you know, a behind the scenes look at something that we don't think about, that there was this whole industry going on. And this is something that we're really excited to dig into more as we can get into these letters and learn more about the Vroomans. Okay, so last thing we'll take a look at here, which is pretty interesting. I'm actually just going to leave it in its sleeve. We found this inside the collection, or inside of another envelope. This is a newspaper clipping that somebody saved, and it is a clipping that is advertising. Again, this is from a lawyer who's actually working out of Detroit. This is advertising to Revolutionary War widows that they might be owed bounty lands or back pay, or they can still get their pensions, as well as orphans of veterans. So it's advertising their services. And interestingly, maybe difficult to see, there's actually a typo in here. So this is saying, by an act of Congress approved February 3, 1853, right there at the end of my finger. That's actually a typo. That act was actually 1843. So we were kind of confused by this when we first saw it. And we were like, man, the Pension Act of 1853, I've never heard of that. But the more we dug into it, this is probably a clipping that Sally would have taken out of a newspaper shortly after Simon's passing. So again, just these little things about, you know, people at their homes, you know, living their lives. And then this is something that really pops up and they've got to go out and, you know, seek these pensions and legal counsel. So that is a quick overview of the Vrooman collection. And I think I saw, Tim, have you joined us? Do you want to jump in and say anything?
Sure. I apologize for my internet connection problems. I was off, on, but I'm on now, so that's what counts. I just wanted to say that when I was the state president of Ohio, I traveled around the state to the different chapter meetings to meet people and say a few well wishes. And that's when I met Ralph Sackett, who's the actual descendant of Simon Vrooman. And I just struck up a conversation with him, and turned out he was an only child of an only child. So I guess he didn't have anyone to leave these items to. And like out of the blue, several months after meeting him, he contacted me and said, hey, would you be interested in my ancestor's weapon and a couple other items I have? And I was taken aback, but I said, well, sure, I'd be honored. And he put me in his will to receive all the items that you see Zach presenting. He actually contacted me again by a letter and said, here's a copy of the will so that I would have it for my records when he passed. And then before he passed, a few years before he passed, he actually called me and said, hey, you want to come get some of these things now? So I made a trip out and spent the day with him. We went out to eat and he showed me his house, and he gave me the musket and the letters and the family Bible, and then the christening cup and the silver spoons. And I had to wait, and he passed, and I got contacted by the attorney for his estate and had to go out again to pick those up. But I wanted to donate this to the SAR Library Museum because I am very active in the Sons of the American Revolution, and I'm grateful for all that they do. And in honor of Mr. Ralph Sackett and his ancestor, I wanted to donate these items to the museum. And I missed the beginning of your presentation, but everything that I attended, I want to thank you, Zach, for putting that all together because it was very informative and well done. And it brings these items a little more to life rather than if I would have kept them sitting on a shelf or in a closet at my house. And I also was concerned, my children or whoever gets them when I pass might just toss them out. So they've gone to a good home.
Well, thanks, Tim. It was our pleasure to get them, and they're unlike any other collection we've seen. And we hope if Al could be here with us today, he would be proud, and I'm sure he would have many more stories to share with us. We appreciate your stewarding the collection and getting it to the SAR. So with that, I guess if there are any questions, we can open it up.
Okay, there's one in the chat box from earlier. Jeffrey Wood asked about the Fowler. Why are there 2 touch holes?
Yes, that is because it was converted to percussion. So as is typical for a lot of these hunting guns, they were used well into the 19th century. So around in the 1830s, you had percussion ignition system was invented. And so a lot of these older flintlock guns were converted to percussion. It's just a little bit easier to use. It's less prone to being ruined by water if you're hunting in humid or rainy conditions. So that's why there's 2 touch holes.
I'm curious about the descendant that's joined us. Glad she was able to be with us, but I wondered if she is a descendant of Simon or another Vrooman.
I was just typing to you. Thank you for having me. I'm actually one of Maria, and she's listed in that family Bible. I was reading the names as fast as I could, and I saw Sister Maria. And well, anyway, my cousin who's in SAR, I'm in DAR, and we've been looking to bring our supplements up to national standards, and we know they're there somewhere, and you may have that link. I mean, I was just texting with him in the chat box too, and it was like, I saw Maria Vrooman. We need to see more about that. So is there a way that at some point you're gonna like make that information available, like all those names? I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the goal, to get it digitized and available online. I'd say in the short term, shoot us an email. I'd be happy to do a one-on-one Zoom like this, and we can take a closer look, or we can get
That'd be
you
awesome.
digital images of all of those pages. That's really, that's the goal of having a Bible like this, is to preserve it so that it's available for usage.
When
So
I
was
saw her
Maria
name there, I was like, this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
was Maria one of Simon's children or a sister of Simon?
It looked like, as I was reading through those names, I think it said sister. She married Frederick Matisse, who was also a Revolutionary War soldier, and he's been proven. But I want to prove her. And she, if this is the right Maria Vrooman, was a prisoner of war and was marched up to Canada. It's listed in a book. Anyway, was marched up to Canada and was a prisoner of war, her and part of her family, and came back. It's in one of the Vrooman books. Anyway, I want to prove her. That's my goal. But anyway, there are like 5 others that if we can prove her, we can branch off for other people too. But so that's my goal, and I don't need to take your time, but
No, let's definitely be in touch after the program and see, hopefully we can help you do that.
that would be awesome. That would be so awesome. You have no idea. So
Mhm.
yeah, I didn't know what you would have available in this collection. And when I saw that family Bible and all those names, I about came unglued. So thank you very much. I'll certainly be in contact after this is over. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, any other questions? All right, well, if not, that about wraps it up. That concludes this edition of Selections from the Collection. Thank you so much for participating, and thank you especially to Tim Ward for giving us a little more background on the topic. As I said earlier, we do this quarterly, so we'll be doing this again sometime in July, and luckily now you are all on our distribution list, so we'll be sure and let you know when a date and time has been decided. So thank you so much again, and we'll see you next time.